Hey guys, welcome back to the Leverage Advantage Show. And today we're very humbled, honored, and grateful to have Yuri Kruman with us. And Yuri is the founder and CEO of Master the Top Consulting. It's a career and life and business coaching company. Now, he's a Fortune 500 personal development consultant, board member, startup advisor, and official member of the Forbes Coaches Council and the Forbes contributor. Yuri helps companies get more exposure and advises startups on identifying their niche and their USP so they can get to profit as quickly as possible. He's a regular guest on top podcasts such as Entrepreneur on Fire, As Told by Nomads, Conscious Millionaire, and The Blind Entrepreneur. He's also been published and featured on Inc., Fast Co, Time, Mashable, PBS, BBC, and numerous top blogs, TV, and radio. Now, in his corporate work, Yuri trains client teams on ways to maximize their customer experience and talent retention, as well as development using storytelling, branding, and proprietary personal development strategies. Thank you so much for setting aside time to be with us, Yuri.
Azil, thank you very much for having me on. It's really a pleasure.
Sure. So, I'm very sure that the introduction that I gave you doesn't do you justice. Can you share a little bit more about what you do and who you help?
Sure. So there are really three arms to my business. The first one deals with startup advising. My focus there is in helping early stage startups, sometimes a little bit later stage companies, to really get their PR and media in high gear. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, depending on their focus, maybe if they're not from a PR background, don't really appreciate the value that PR and media can have to their trajectory. So for me, it's a priority to help them figure out, what is their ideal client profile, what is their USP, and then how to get their message into top publications, on top podcasts, on TV, radio, etc. I also help them with telling their story in the context of customer experience and HR, hiring, and all of that sort of thing. Another part of my business deals with advising Fortune 500 companies and top startups on HR, hiring, people, culture, anything related to the human element, which from my perspective, and of course it's not just my perspective, is really the special sauce of any company. And then the third piece of what I do is helping mid-career millennials to really figure out what is their dream job, how to create a career action plan, and then execute it so that they can go and learn whatever it is they need, in any area, any kind of company all over the world, so that later they can start their own company. That is always the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think a perfect place for us to start really is that first leg of the first arm that you were talking about, really helping companies get into the media and that PR. My question really is how can companies maximize their exposure on the media? Because we've been in the media and we help some of our clients get into the media as well, but it doesn't really or at least maybe we don't know how to do it. It doesn't really move the needle in terms of, say, sales, like immediately. Maybe you see we get a little bit more attention, but there isn't that big or that significant of a spike in sales. So maybe we're doing something wrong. How can we maximize that opportunity?
Sure. So the first thing to understand about PR and media is not a magic bullet. Most people think it is, I was featured in Forbes or Fast Company or Inc. You're right. It does not magically bring sales. That's not how it works. But what it does for you is it gives you a certain legitimacy, which allows you to raise your prices, create high standards for your company from the top down and bottom up, meaning with regard to how you look, what story you tell, what kinds of people you can hire, and all of those kinds of things. So to be very clear, even when you do get featured in those places, the first thing it does is it establishes a baseline, but it doesn't magically vault you into the minds of everybody. In fact, one very important thing to understand, most of these websites, most of these platforms like Forbes, Inc., Fast Company, etc., they will give you only pretty limited exposure, meaning maybe a few thousand views on average, right? Certain things, maybe if you talk about, the habits of Elon Musk or Steve Jobs and all of that sort of thing, that will probably get you into a lot better SEO position. But if you're really writing about something substantive, don't look for that kind of exposure, 1 or 2 or 3 articles to really solve all your sales issues. The key here is you should always orient yourself as a company and as an executive to help others. Okay. The key is when you go on platforms like Quora or Reddit, or maybe you look at Amazon book comments and reviews, right? Those are the places where you can actually have outsized impact. I'll give you an example. My first article that went viral, I wrote something about 50 mini life hacks to create a great life. Okay, so I was clearly not looking to sell anything. I just had one day this urge that I'm going to go and write down 50 things that have really, 50 guidelines that I've used to, get through very, very difficult times over and over. And suddenly it was sent all over to different newsletters on Quora, tens of thousands of people. All of a sudden I got contacted by a Quora editor. We'd love to feature this on our Inc. blog. Wow, okay. Then PBS got in touch. We'd love to feature this on our site. So again, I wasn't trying to sell. I wasn't trying to even discuss something relevant particularly to my business, but I help people. I still get messages every day from, India, all over the world. Thank you so much. I have this on my fridge. This is really helping me change my life. God bless. I'm happy to hear that. So the key insight, be helpful, add value, right? Whether you're pitching an editor for Forbes or whether you're helping a client or whether you're just being a good person, that sort of thing snowballs. Then you become the go-to expert for that. You have a good brand because you help people. You're always looking to add value. And that, again, gets you into other top publications. You want to go wide. You don't necessarily want to just focus on top publications. You want to focus on top blogs as well, right? Because the key in the end, for you to find the right customers, you don't need massive exposure of millions of people. You might need exposure to hundreds, maybe, of your ideal clients. That is what's going to get you customers that pay for your product, service, brand, etc. That's what really matters in the end. Okay, so most people think, it's a magic bullet. I just pay, my, PR usually costs something like $4,000 to $5,000 a month on a retainer for 6 months at least, right? Most people think this is the magic bullet. Not in this world, not in this current environment.
Absolutely. I love your insight as well. So that's also the way that we pitch it to our clients when we do PR and press releases for them. We tell them, look, like getting into the media is not going to give you a spike in sales. It'll help you with your branding. It'll help you with your trust symbols. The more of these publications that publish you, the more of these logos you can put on your site that you get published, and it helps you with that credibility factor, that legitimacy, like you said. But the impact is not direct. It could mean that your conversions increase. It could mean that you could price higher or raise your standards and, profile yourself in a different way. So I absolutely agree with you there. When it comes to pitching journalists, what do you think is do you have any guidelines or tips that could help with that process?
Yeah. So the first thing to understand is that you are among hundreds, probably thousands of others that are pitching journalists every single day. So if you do the same thing that everyone else is doing, you're going to fail. That means starting with a subject line. If you say, pitch for blah, 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 forget it. Okay, you're just like every other schmuck. You don't want to do that. Excuse me. You want to find a way to add value. You want to show that you've done your research. You want to show that you are informed, and you know that perhaps in their particular beat that he or she is missing this amazing angle. Okay, so it might not be a direct pitch, write about my company. Okay, schmuck, get in line, right? It should be something that adds value, that adds perspective, that adds context to the conversation that the journalist or blogger or whoever is creating online. Is that already exists. And you're coming in, and in a very short and concise way, you're adding that value. You're saying that here's something that I think you would benefit from, and you build a relationship. You do not look to just spray and pray. It's one of the worst things that the vast majority of entrepreneurs and everybody in the world tends to do. And that's why it's not successful. So build a relationship, add value first before you say, me. Talk about me.
Awesome, awesome. Now let's move on to a little bit on that second arm of your business, really helping small companies, startup companies, especially with regards to whether it's their niching, whether it's their USP, or even their human relations issues. What do you think is the biggest challenge for startups in terms of say getting to profit quickly? Why are they not getting to profit as quickly as they want to?
I think the key is the mentality. I think most entrepreneurs have this frankly foolish mantra of if we build it, it will come, they will come. No, that's not the way it works in the real world, right? When I started out in doing my own company, I'd advised a number of others and found that, certain things work, certain things don't. Even with that insight, when I was starting my own company, Master of the Talk Consulting, I found it difficult, first of all, to stand out from the crowd, right? Let's say, I started out as a career coach. There is something like, tens of thousands, no joke, tens of thousands of career coaches in the US alone. Okay, so you can very quickly get trapped in the commoditization trap that, I'm specialized in, finance, healthcare, whatever, but I'm on a platform, someone's taking the chunk for bringing the business. And here I am, playing nice. You quickly get sick of that. You realize that I have to build a brand. I have to tell my story well. It all has to do with who I am. Why am I doing this? What is my passion? And quickly from that, when you start building a brand, you realize, again, PR and media, great, important, gives you legitimacy, but it ain't going to bring you customers magically. So you realize that the key to finding the right channels for you to get customers, your ideal customers, not just any customers, is by testing a lot of different strategies, a lot of different channels. So for me, I'm getting some leads through these platforms, right? Especially from one, which is the biggest one. Qualified leads. I'm getting a lot of very unqualified bad leads from another platform. I soon realized that LinkedIn for me, for coaching mid-career millennials who are looking to leave, let's say, banks and other corporations to go to tech, I have to go out and find them, add them, message them on LinkedIn, because that is the place where they are looking for work. They're looking for connections. And I get them exactly where they hang out, where they play, where they're ready to have a conversation. And it's not a sexy answer. It's not about magic Facebook ads. It's not about, doing SEO and putting down thousands of dollars, to rank high in Google searches, right? The answer is often not very sexy. It's not expected. It's not what you want it to be. It's not what gurus say it is. It is the answer at which you arrive as a result of doing testing. That's really it. That's the key.
Absolutely, man. Like I completely agree with you. I think one of the things that we tell our clients as well is that business is a series of micro tests, and one of the things that stops people from testing is because they think if they test and they fail, then their business is over. I think that mentality where there are people, especially in Asia, I can tell you that. Like in Asia, people are so afraid of testing because they're afraid they're going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they need to understand that the opposite of success is not failure. The opposite of success is quitting. And if you learn how to test, and because failure to me is not fatal, failure is not permanent, it's just feedback, right? So if you do something, a lot of times when people come to me and say, hey, do you think this is going to work? I tell them, look, I really don't know. Like, why don't we test it and we find out? Because
right.
I don't know everything. So I completely resonate with you there. I think a lot more. I think the mindset, that mentality of going out, getting feedback, real feedback, primary feedback from the market is so powerful. It's just that not enough people are doing it because they're afraid of failing.
That's right.
Share with me a little bit more about your third arm, though. I'm really interested about how you talk to, say, mid-career millennials and prepare them for, say, entrepreneurship, what is the primary driving force for them to prepare for a life of entrepreneurship?
Well, the first qualifier is that I would not suggest for everyone to become an entrepreneur. We've talked about this already. A lot of people are too risk averse. A lot of people are not willing to test. They see failure as fatal, whereas quitting is the real issue. So I don't necessarily see that as an answer for everyone. However, the clients that tend to come to me, they already tend to have those kinds of thoughts. They may have already tried to do something. So it's a question of self-fulfilling prophecy. The kinds of people that I look for tend to already have that when they come to me. So that's a self-selecting paradigm. I want to be clear about that. The other issue is that I strongly believe, given where the U.S. economy is, it's the kind of paradigm where millennials are getting paid less than their parents were if you factor for inflation. A lot of opportunities are getting closed in the tech sector because of the big five are just swallowing everything up. Innovation is drying up. So my play here, my perspective is that a lot of people should be teaching others how to go through a process, whether that's changing careers, whether that's starting a business, whether it's going through some kind of life trauma, divorce, whatever it is, right? You want, and you can, no matter who you are, what your qualifications or lack thereof, if you have been through a process where you have come out, despite great odds, great challenges, to be better than you were before, that means you can go and help others going through the same thing. And there are always, many thousands, usually millions, tens of millions of people just, in your region, let's say, or even your country, if you're in the US or China. So if you have nothing else, but you have that process down, you have the resources, the tactics, the strategies, the language and psychology around going through that process, you can, and I argue should, go and create a program. You should create maybe a course, maybe write a book. It really depends on where you are, how much time you have, how much investment you can make in those things. But you should go and help others, add value to the lives of others, and you will, by process of elimination, take some of that value for yourself. The big picture is that because there's so much mobility in the workplace, because so many jobs are getting eliminated, because so many of them are getting outsourced, and there's artificial intelligence that's a play here as well. You have to act, you have to be proactive now, not wait for your bank job, for your hospital job, whatever job to be eliminated, because you're going to be screwed. So go create another stream of revenue. You don't need to start a tech company. You don't need to start something capital intensive. You don't need to open a coffee shop or a restaurant. Go figure out what process you've been through in your life that you can teach others to go through successfully in a shorter way with better results. That you can charge a lot of money for, and you should. You should not commoditize your services. Do something in a premium way, help people to change their psychology and their language and to improve their life. For that, you should be compensated, and that will be another line of revenue. Eventually, if you do things really well, create a great brand, create a niche, communicate your USP, you will become the go-to expert in your niche, in your industry, etc. And that is how you can eventually replace your income from your corporate job or whatever day job you have. And that becomes the real deal. It's very tough. It's not easy. You have to iterate, you have to learn, and you have to become the best at whatever it is you do. And that is some measure of freedom that you can achieve. It's not a magic bullet. It's still, you have to work like crazy, and there's a ton of competition. But that is one very important paradigm that most people never care to test. And that's what I help them to do.
Awesome. So it sounds like really helping them execute on the expert model, so to speak, that a lot of people, talk about. And that's actually very similar to our own path. We had our own business coach, we had our own business mentor that actually brought us through the expert model step by step. And that was how we made our first 6 figures in business. Just so long ago. But here's the problem. Eventually we also ended up teaching the expert model. But in Asia, here's the thing. Like in Asia, the humility is such a big thing, and people just don't have that belief. It's a challenge to get people to believe that people would pay for their experience, right? So I always tell them, look, like think about yourself 5 years ago, right? You between now and then you'd have solved so many problems that you're going to be able to help somebody who was in your position 5 years ago solve those problems much faster, with less pain. In fact, losing less money. How do you? These people want it, but they just lack that self-belief. Is that a challenge that you face as well?
It's always a challenge. I work with a lot of very highly qualified people with, great education, great background, blah, blah, blah. And I also work with a lot of people that, maybe don't have those degrees or experience, whatever. But the key is always the mindset, right? If you're someone with a growth mindset, number one, that's already a huge plus. If you don't see the world as a, fixed pie and you have to fight with someone for your little piece. I want to tell you a really paradigmatic story that happened to me last year. I think this is something that, I'm very much story driven in my business and the way I have my clients. I think this is a great way to frame this discussion. So I was in business for about 9 months in my career coaching, executive coaching. I reached out to a company in business for 30 years. These guys are charging, $700 an hour. They're the top in their field in New York. So this is the top, right? They come up always at the top in Google searches, all those kinds of things. I'm in discussions with them, pretty advanced. They wanted to bring me on under their umbrella. And I was very, very lucky to have one of the best coaches I could possibly imagine having. And I'm talking to her. I'm like, I'm not sure. I only have this 9 months of experience, and I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit too much. She said, "Stop. You have been coaching your whole entire life." My first thought is, "Oh, come on." But I'm like, "God, you're absolutely right. That has always been in my personality. I've always been a great listener. People would stop me in the street, tell me their life stories, even when I was a kid. I was a little kid, little pisher." And those kinds of things are usually with you from a much earlier age than you think. That's the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you're in Asia or you're in the US or you're confident or you're not confident. You need to visualize yourself and your progression with much greater depth, right? Whatever it is you're really good at, it's not in a vacuum. It's not something that you learned in a class. It's not something that you just picked up one day. This is probably a huge element of who you are already. So in that sense, you're not a beginner. You're not someone who's starting in your 10,000 hours of mastery. That's nonsense, right? And my coach was able to instill that mindset in me that you have always been a coach. So do not, for any reason, forsake that. Do not just throw it away. Do not just say that that's not relevant. And, even though I ended up not working with them, it wasn't a good match business-wise, I keep that with me to this day. It's one of the most powerful things for me in my business and all my interactions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that story. I think we would definitely find it very valuable. Share with me, Yuri, who inspires you?
Well, I'm very lucky to be inspired by a number of great people. The first one I would say is my mom. My mom is someone who is an immigrant actually twice. She was born in Kazakhstan, moved to Moscow when she was 10, and then immigrated when she was in her early 40s. I was just a 9-year-old kid to Kentucky. So not the typical kind of path to, New York, rah, rah, rah. I'm also lucky in the sense that my grandfather, my mother's father, was also a big role model for me. He's someone that, I still look up to, even though he's been gone actually 20 years this year. Just people that have gone through huge challenges have always been good people, regardless of whatever they went through, and they've always helped others in whatever way they could, even though it hurt them, in terms of politics or, having that business mindset. And there, of course, are many others like, Tim Ferriss, Ramit Sethi, there's James Altucher. These are all people that, I've read their work. I've seen how they talk about their struggles and how they built their businesses against great odds, against, a surrogate Asian father or depression or, having 17 out of 20 companies fail. I mean, you name it. These are really great tutors, mentors. I'd like to think that anyone and anything, whether it's a book or podcast or whatever resource, can be a great mentor, whether it's for the good or for the bad. And often it's both, right? There's no such thing as, this is my idol, right? This is someone that is absolutely perfect. That doesn't exist on earth, right? So you always take the good with the bad, and you always look, to help others and to learn from everybody. That's my perspective.
Awesome, man. We're coming to the end of the interview. If people want to know more about what you do, where can they go?
Please feel free to go to my website. It's called masterthetalk.com. And also feel free to email me. I'm very responsive. It's Yuri, Y-U-R-I, at masterthetalk.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for setting aside the time to speak to me and my audience. I really appreciate it. You have a fantastic day. Thank you, Yuri.
Thank you so much, Fazil. It's been a great hour.
Hey there, thanks so much for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, check out a relevant video here, and don't forget to subscribe to us for more marketing tips, techniques, strategies that are working for us, or just more behind the scenes fun. See ya!